So when it comes to firearms, the AR-15 is a popular choice, but not everyone can afford to drop $1,000, $2,000, even $1,500 on an AR-15. So that's where the budget price range market kind of has excelled, because it's allowed a lot of people to get into the AR-15 market at a price point that they can afford and afford to shoot. But there are some potential downsides and some legitimate concerns. Often with budget manufacturers, they are using lower quality parts, not quite machining them to the same standard, skimping out on certain features and certain ways of producing these firearms that can cause accuracy concerns, reliability concerns, and longevity concerns. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows over in the land of budget beater rifles. When a gun goes down, this isn't makeup. This isn't just a bad hair day. When a gun goes down, it could mean something as simple as maybe you lose the match. Maybe you don't hit the animal that you were intending to hit. Or maybe the gun fails you in a moment that you need it most. So while there is a lot of reason to go with the budget AR, not everything is going to be made to the same standard. And we're going to talk about some of the downsides and some of the good sides of budget AR-15s. And I will be using this Rifle Supply RS15 as my firearm to kind of illustrate this point. This gun is all show and unfortunately not so much go. So let's get into it. Before we get into it, a quick message from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Barbell Apparel. Now, you notice in a lot of my shooting footage over the last several months, probably over the last year, that I've been wearing Barbell Apparel jeans, shirts, long sleeves, and all that sort of stuff, basically anytime I go out to the range. I practically live in my multiple pairs of Barbell Apparel jeans at this point. If you got thick thighs that save lives, you're gonna wanna check out Barbell Apparel. They're very comfortable, they have just enough stretch, and Barbell has a great return policy and honestly, just incredible products. If you're into anything outdoors, active, that sort of thing, or if you like going to the gym, they have products that are built for you and built to last. Thank you to Barbell Apparel. Use the link in the description, and when you get to the survey portion of how you found out about them, let them know that I sent you. Now, one of the primary concerns with an AR-15 would be accuracy. When you get a budget rifle, often accuracy is one of the few things that you can't quite reliably get as frequent with the budget lineup. Every manufacturer is going to have some variance, whether it's LaRue, who historically has had very great barrels, Geisley, FN, Daniel Defense, Criterion, all of their barrels are going to perform slightly different from each other, but generally they will be in some sort of range where 2 standard deviations away from average, you will find 95% of the performance ballparks in that range. When you go with a cheaper gun, sometimes you can get phenomenal accuracy. I know people who have personally developed hand loads for a PSA rifle that can actually shoot sub 1 minute of angle, 1-inch groups at 100 yards in 10-round groups. Now, just because occasionally one day you happen to put a 3-round group and all of them touched does not mean your gun is sub MOA. I'm talking about real, sustainable, consistent accuracy. With the budget guns, you might get lucky, but you might get unlucky. Well, fortunately for you, if your gun with cheap ammo is capable of shooting 3 to 4 inches consistently, that's really good enough for the average person, and it's good enough for the military even. Then we have the issue of overgassing for the sake of reliability. A lot of times with these cheaper guns, this gun specifically is a 16-inch carbine length gas system. It's a little bit overgassed. And now overgassing is not the end of the world. It's actually not even necessarily a bad thing completely. When you have an AR that is overgassed, what that means is that there is more gas than is necessary to properly cycle the bolt. Yes, you do need a certain amount of gas to reliably get the bolt to come to the rear, strip off a round, and put a new one in, right? When you put too much gas into the system, yes, you might allow for more of an operational envelope when the gun is really dirty, when it's not lubed properly, when there might be sand or dirt in the action. And that's good for many people for a lot of reasons. But there is a trade-off to that. And generally, I think companies go far too into the overgassed side of the range than they are to be closer to the middle of what would be optimal for most people in most conditions. When you go with a gun that's super overgassed, like this gun here, you are generally going to see increased wear and lower lifespan of parts because things are hitting harder, they're unlocking quicker, and there's more heat generating in the system from that friction just beating the hell out of all the internal components. I've had guns that were really overgassed, and I've had guns that were perfectly gassed. And the perfectly gassed guns were reliable in the same ways that the overgassed guns were, but I know that the properly gassed guns that have adequate amounts of gas for adverse conditions will be better long-term and more shootable in the short term. The next biggest thing that you might see with a budget AR would be material quality and coatings. Oftentimes manufacturers choose to spec their parts using materials and manufacturing methods that are not for the betterment of you. They do often cost less than some of the true mil-spec components, but oftentimes when you see a budget AR that it says, hey, this has a mil-spec bolt, but then you notice it's a 9130 carrier and it's nitrided, and then you see that it's only MPI tested, not high pressure tested and magnetic particle inspected, and you start asking yourself, what does mil-spec really even mean for these companies? Well, generally, when they say mil-spec, what they mean is actually just that it'll fit in a normal AR-15. And that's great. I'm glad that the parts are compatible. But when you skip out on quality materials, coatings, treatment processes, and testing, sometimes you can end up with bad quality control and lower quality parts. Not always a bad thing. Sometimes your gun will work just fine, but there is a reason that you might want to spend a little bit of extra money on things like the bolt carrier group or the barrel to actually have certain mil-spec characteristics aside from just it will physically fit in your gun. Which really does lead us to the next point of quality control and consistency. I touched on this a few times in the accuracy department, but when you have a gun that is made at a cheaper price, one of the first places that a company will skip out on is proper testing and proper quality assurance and quality control. Now, this might not be the end of the world for you. Maybe you just wanted a cheap budget rifle, and hey, the manufacturer has a great warranty and good customer service. That can, for most people, outweigh the cons of going with a cheaper budget rifle because, hey, you take it to the range and maybe your range day just has more malfunction clearing drills spontaneously. And you see that as a good thing. That's fine. You contact the manufacturer, you get a new gun, it's all good. With budget manufacturers, you generally are going to see less consistency. Every, and I mean every manufacturer has produced some stinkers. I mean, I know people personally that have had issues with BCM. I know all sorts of people online that have had issues with Knight's Armament, CAC. But the frequency that you see those failures is generally, and I mean generally, we can all kind of give everyone a little bit of a pass and a little bit of grace during the COVID era, but with these budget manufacturers, it's generally something that plagues them long term, and it does kind of damage their reputation long term. With the bigger, more established manufacturers, sometimes people give them more of a pass, but I don't think we necessarily always should, and we should always be a little bit skeptical. So if you have a budget gun, make sure you test it. Most of these guns, in my experience, if a gun is going to have problems, it's going to have problems probably within the first 1,000 rounds. Foreshadowing. Now, if you have the ability and the time and the willingness to test, do your own quality control, and you have the experience, maybe that's good enough for you. And I'm not saying at all to not buy a budget AR. I'm just trying to get you to consider whether or not it's really worth it, because ruining a few range trips for me is hours and hours and hours of my time, and there is nothing I hate more than having my time wasted because I have a full-time job, I have a wife, I have friends, I have other hobbies. I like to shoot. So when I go out to shoot a gun, and that's what my plan is for the day, and I drove 2 hours to get to the range, and the gun fails me really early, I ruined an entire day. And for me, that is super frustrating. But everyone's different, and everyone's time is worth different things to them. So for you, it might not be that big of a deal. Now, let's flip to some of the positives. Hey, you get a cheap gun. Maybe it's a second rifle, maybe it's a beater rifle, maybe it's your first rifle. My first AR was a Palmetto State Armory AR that I built from a stripped lower with one of their kits back in 2012 or 2013, can't quite remember, during the height of the Obama scare. I way overspent for that thing, but it was all I could afford. I saved up over a summer job in college, and I saved every penny I could for 8-9 months. I was eating very, very strictly. I was doing everything that I could to get the money to afford that. And what that gave me was a reliable tool that I could use to defend myself, and I could go to the range with, and I had I had money to spare to actually shoot the thing. So if buying a $700, $800, $900 rifle is all you can afford, but then you can also buy a couple thousand rounds of ammo, that's awesome. You know, if you buy the $1,500 gun, but then you can't really shoot it very often, how good is that really to you? Maybe rolling the dice on a budget gun is worth it. And with a budget gun, you're more likely to be okay with shooting it hard. Now, me personally, I run all my guns, even my nice ones, really hard because I like shooting. I like shooting fast. I like practicing various positions. I like leaning up against barricades, rocks, going prone, all that stuff. I like shooting a lot. That's why I do what I do, and that's why I enjoy making this content for you guys. But some people like to have their guns look nice if they spend a lot of money and might not be willing to train with it more often. Maybe having that second beater rifle allows you to train hard with that gun and put less rounds on the gun you actually care about. Maybe you end up getting really lucky and get a PSA or even a Bear Creek Arsenal, which I don't recommend. Maybe you end up getting one of those budget guns and you have a fantastic time and the gun's perfectly reliable and you just saved a ton of money. That's awesome. There is no better feeling, in my opinion, than getting a budget gun with good specs, rolling the dice, and getting sevens on that. You know, there is no better feeling, in my opinion, than getting a budget gun that performs really well, because you feel like you kind of stole something. It's like winning on the jackpot. It's like winning a good hand on blackjack. It's like going to the casino and not hemorrhaging money and donating to the Native Americans. It just feels good, right? There's something about that you can't quite put a value on because it's just, it feels so good, right? But that ultimately leads me to today's rifle, which is the topic of this discussion, the Rifle Supply RS15. Now, in the video footage that you saw during the ad read, you saw that I might have had a Rise Armament trigger and a Gunner 1:8 optic on it. I love that trigger. Code Reno20 will save you a little bit of money on that. I love that optic. Code Reno will save you a little bit of money on that. It's a first focal plane 1:8, and it hits. It has no business being that good for the price. The Rise Armament trigger, oh my God, I love my Geisleys. I love my SD3G. I've owned those. I've probably put 20,000 rounds through various guns with various Geisley SD3Gs in them. Day one with the Rise 535, I could shoot that thing faster than any gun I've ever shot in my entire life, barring full autos. I put an extended Geisley charging handle on this thing, but otherwise what you see here is a Rifle Supply entry-level budget AR with their custom cell shading Cerakote on it. This kind of reminds me of the look from like the Borderlands games, which I saw that they did one in green, and when they said they wanted to send one out and what Cerakote I wanted, I asked for this. Now, the Cerakote does cost nearly as much. This Cerakote pattern and style did cost nearly as much as the rifle would have. Thankfully, they sent this out to me for free. I like the guys over at Rifle Supply. They've supported the events that I've done at Route 66. And the Cerakote job, they absolutely killed it. There was not a single mark or blemish on this. And I had a good time shooting it. With the muzzle brake on this thing, this is just a cheapo. I kind of kept with the theme of going budget with this. This was a cheap muzzle brake, but it does the job. And this gun was fun to shoot. First day out, I had a good time. I shot about 800 rounds, mostly just shooting fast into close range targets because it was windy, very windy. It was very wet, and I thought that that was the reason that I wasn't able to get a good group on paper. I was able to get a very rough 0, but it seemed like, I thought that the targets moving back and forth was the cause of my very wide group that was generally centered around the bullseye. But this is a big but. In that first 800 rounds, I did have 0 malfunctions and it shot well. I took it out a second day, and within 100 rounds, I had already begun to get stovepiping and various failures to fully eject the round out of the gun. First day 800, next day 900, or the next time I took it out 900. In between, I wiped it down and lubed it. I also lubed it during the second day, hoping that maybe that was the cause of the malfunctions I was getting. Within 250 rounds, I had already experienced several failures to fully extract, and I had several failures where the gun would lock open with ammo still left in the magazine, and maybe I'll show that over. You won't be able to hear it, but you'll see. And then it just progressively got worse and worse. I realized that I was having trouble hitting targets, a 50-yard steel target, that I previously thought I was dialed in for. So I started off the day, got a rough group, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle shooting from a tripod to get my 0 on target. And now I didn't shoot this gun any hotter or get it any hotter than I had previously. And both days that I was out, it was rather cool, below 55 degrees ambient temperature. So the gun was never so hot to the point that it was getting hot on my hands. And it was, I basically shot the guns exactly like I did all my guns. I shot them fast, I shot them hard, a couple hundred rounds over the course of a couple hours. And I noticed, right off the rip, when I put the new optic on the second day, that I was having trouble getting a 0. I would shoot a 3 or a 5 round group. I would see most of the bullets really, really tight. And then there would just be one flyer way off in no man's land. And now I was shooting Lake City 5.56 for the most part. And this was ammo that I have shot through all my guns. Some of my guns shoot 10 round groups with this stuff at like 2 inches. At 50 yards with this gun, I was not able to get a consistent group below 7 inches or below like 5 or 6 inches at 50 yards if the barrel was warm. Now, I let the gun cool down because I thought, okay, maybe it's just me, maybe there's something wrong. So I shot some other guns. I let this gun cool for about 45 minutes. It was stone cold. I put my gun up on the tripod. I fired 5 rounds at a steel target that had just kind of a distinct enough mark on it for me to aim at that spot. Slow fire from a tripod, 50 yards. All 5 rounds were touching in some sort of way, or the spall was touching. And I said, okay, that was good. The second that I got through another couple rounds, the gun just started opening up. And what I realized was the second that this gun gets warm, and I mean like less than a full standard capacity magazine, it becomes impossible to get any amount of consistency. I was shooting this gun and a AR pistol with the Daniel Defense 11.5-inch upper. With the Daniel Defense upper on a different pistol lower, standing with just a red dot at 200 yards, I was able to reliably and consistently hit an 8-inch steel plate. This gun, immediately after, same ammo, from a bench, from a supported position, I could get the first 1 or 2 hits to land on the target, and after that, Hail Marys. I was all over the place. There was no reliable consistency. Now the scope was properly torqued down. I used a torque wrench. It's a scope that's held 0 perfectly fine on my 308. But on this gun, both days with 2 different scopes, I could not get a group at 100 yards better than 14-ish MOA. The second it gets warm. That's a little caveat. And by warm, I do in fact mean just a handful, 10, 15 rounds over the course of a few minutes. This gun becomes unshootable or unable to shoot a even moderately okay acceptable group. I'm talking minute of man, minute of smaller dude torso at 100 yards. So you have zero wiggle room for any human error input, and you're off target completely, which is just unacceptable. So as I went through that 900 rounds on the second day, getting up, once I got to 1,700 rounds, and I know it was exactly or within 20 rounds of 1,700, either way, I know that I called it quits. I have this all written down in an Excel sheet of everything I did to the gun, every modification, every cleaning, all that stuff. Every time I lubed it, I wrote it down in my Excel sheet. I called it quits because at that point I had more failures to extract and failures to eject than I could count. I had more and more consistently instances where the gun was locking open with ammo still left in the mag. This was with different magazines each time it happened. All mags that work properly in my normal guns. This gun looks great. They killed it with the Cerakote, but the gun itself does not meet any amount of standard. So I'm not saying, I don't want your takeaway here to be that you should never, ever get a budget rifle. I'm not talking bad, even generally, on the concept of getting a less expensive gun. I'm just saying that sometimes when you get a budget gun, you don't get performance that is acceptable. I really hate to have to say it because I do like the guys over at Rifle Supply. I very much appreciate that they sent me out this gun and they really did kill it on the Cerakote. I understand that this is not for everyone, but this gun just does not meet any expectation that I would expect a gun to meet. It's not reliable, it's incredibly inaccurate, and I think that the reason for that is because they've chosen to skimp out on certain parts. I didn't abuse this gun in ways that I abuse guns. You know, I shot this gun exactly like I shot all my other guns that have all survived, including PSA. The only rifle that I have reviewed that has done worse than this would be the initial iteration of the Foxtrot Mike and my Bear Creek Arsenal uppers. Other than that, this gun did not perform nearly to any standard that I would think anyone would be acceptable. If you can't hit a target at 200 yards, if you can't hit a 4 MOA target at 200 yards, even reasonably consistently from a bench, I don't think that that's acceptable, in my opinion. So, unfortunately, I currently cannot recommend the budget lineup of the RS15 from Rifle Supply. I've heard rumors from some people that it might be Bear Creek Arsenal barrels. I know they sell a lot of Bear Creek Arsenal barrels, and I think one of their uppers even mentioned that it uses a BCA barrel, but not this one. It doesn't specifically mention who makes the barrel, but I do know that they use BCA barrels in some of their guns, and they did not give me an answer on who specifically is the OEM for the barrel and bolt. So maybe BCA strikes again. I can't really say for sure, but all I know is that this gun did not meet my performance expectations. I don't think that I want to, at this point, put a new barrel and bolt in it because I've already spent nearly $1,000 on ammo reviewing this gun. I don't particularly feel the need to spend another several $100s on a barrel and bolt in the hopes that it works. I think this gun is just going to be a neat thing that I keep in my safe, maybe bring out occasionally if I'm just going to be shooting at dirt, close range, that kind of thing. Let people that are new to guns just rip it, grip it and rip it. Hey, this looks cool. Do you like this? You could do something like this. Let me help you build something out. But currently, I can't recommend that anyone buy this because my experience has just been so unfortunate. Now, your experience might be better. In fact, it probably will be better. I might have bitten the bullet for you. I might have gotten the bad one that they produced. But I just, from what I know, it being in the budget price range, I can't really recommend it, unfortunately. Have you had better experiences with budget rifles? I certainly hope so. Let me know what you guys think down below. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace. And now I'm getting pretty weak ejection, so I wonder if I've just blown out the bolt rings. Yeah, that ejected right at my feet right here. So let's I'm just gonna aim at the dirt. Forward, forward, forward. Yeah, I don't know. There's something going on with this. I might pop the bolt open and take a look at it. So no failures on that one, but you saw me check the chamber when it went empty, because on the previous mag I did have a round, or I did have two failures. One where the mag locked open prematurely, and then one where it was a failure to extract. Okay, so we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times 30, it's 270 plus a 10 round mag. We're 280 rounds into the day and we've had two failures. This gun was sort of basically wiped down and lubed really, really well prior to taking it out today. This ammo has been very good for me in all of my other guns and this gun on the previous range session, but so far I'm noticing very, very subpar accuracy. I thought that the reason I was only able to get a really rough group the last time I was out was due to the wind and rain and my targets not being very stable. But taking it here today, no wind, 50 yards, stable target, shooting from a tripod. I'm using 55 grain, full metal jacket, cheap stuff, but this has a 1 in 8 twist barrel. Should be able to handle that just fine. At 50 yards, I was getting, in a 3-shot group, I'd get like 2 right next to each other, and then one way off. Like, it was really weird. And then I shot a 5-round group, 2 5-round groups, and it would be like maybe 3 rounds next to each other, really, really tight, and then 1 or 2 just fucking off in other directions. So I know that I'm not the best shooter in the world, but at 50 yards, my error is maybe like a half an inch or like 1 inch in diameter of error. There's just no way that it's me, in my opinion. There is just something that is wrong with this gun when it comes to accuracy, and now I'm getting reliability issues. And now I will preface that with, or I guess post that with, whatever, and a note to take into consideration. First day that I took it out, I shot about 800 rounds. Got the gun pretty hot, but like no hotter than any of the other guns that I do. Like, I mean, you've seen some of my reviews in the past potentially, and it's not been, all my other guns can handle that kind of shooting, right? Like, I'm shooting fast, but they can all handle it. So now I'm experiencing issues in this gun on a scope that is torqued down properly, that held up fine on a 308. Okay, so I let this gun cool down a good amount, let it sit for about 45 minutes while I shot some other stuff. And you can see those fresh hits. I was aiming basically right here, and they're, you know, in this area, and they're all hitting. So maybe it's just that when the gun gets hot,